Welcome to Pre-Calculus 11, and welcome to Lesson 1.1, which is on absolute value. This will be a nice, quick lesson for you, ease you into this course. Pretty well every other section is more difficult than this one. Sorry. We're going to talk about absolute value, and before I tell you exactly what absolute value is, I have a question for you. What do these two numbers, 6 and -6, what do those two numbers have in common? Now I know you said right away they both have a 6 in them. I want you to think a little bit deeper about it. What do those numbers have in common? I'll give you a hint. Think of a number line. So again, I'm asking you, what does the number 6 and the number -6, what do they have in common? And the answer is they're both the same distance away from this number, 0. They're both the same distance from 0 on the number line. What's this distance right here? If you were to walk from there to there, how far do you walk? You walked 6. If you were to walk from here to here, or if you were to walk from here to here, if I'm just talking about distance, what's the distance? 6. They have the same distance from 0 on the number line. And that's one way you can define absolute value. Absolute value is the number of units that a number is from 0 on a number line. The answer is always positive. It doesn't make sense when I'm talking about a distance. If I talk about how far I walked, if I say I walked -4, it doesn't make sense to say that. And the other thing is, it's represented, absolute value is represented with this symbol. You can see it all down the page here. These two vertical bars. Okay, so the first question, we'll get through a whole bunch of questions here. The first question here is the absolute value of -7. So you're asking yourself, how many units is -7 away from 0 on a number line? Well, if you think of that number line, -7 is 7 units away from 0. So the absolute value of -7 is 7. How about the absolute value of -3.2? Well, you can think of the number line again if you want. -3.2 is around there. What's the distance from there to 0? It's 3.2. Okay, absolute value of 5. Now, careful. Sometimes when people do these first two questions, they think that the absolute value is like an opposite machine or something. It makes everything opposite, but it doesn't make it opposite. It's specifically asking how far away is this number from 0 on the number line. How far away is 5 from 0? 5. Not -5. It's not an opposite machine. Okay, so let's summarize. You can think of it like number of units away from 0 on a number line, but the way most people deal with absolute value is if the number inside is a negative, what happens to it? It becomes positive. If the number inside is a positive, what happens to it? It stays positive. Okay, there's only one other possibility. What if it's not negative and not positive? What if it's 0? How many steps away or how many units away from 0 is 0 on a number line? 0. Okay, now we get to a few more difficult ones. The first one, we need to give you one of these important bullets to deal with this. Absolute value signs are like brackets. Do what's in them first. So you don't, what sometimes people try to do with this is they do something, don't write this down, but they do something like, oh, absolute value, so everything becomes positive, so it should be like this now. No, that's not true. What you do is first of all figure out how much the amount inside the absolute value signs equals, and then take the absolute value. So in other words, 3 take away 8 is how much? It's -5. Now take the absolute value of it -5 and you get +5. Okay, how about this one? Well, we have a negative and it's outside, and remember we're doing the stuff in the brackets first. We're treating them like brackets. So we're going to leave that negative outside and we're going to deal with the stuff inside. 6 take away 2 is 4. Okay, now be careful. A lot of people see absolute values and they say the answer is 4 here. It's not, because now we're going to do the absolute value. What's the absolute value of the number inside? What's the absolute value of 4? The absolute value of 4 is 4. But you still have a negative there. So the answer is -4. Now this upsets a lot of people. They say, well, I thought you said the absolute value is always positive. Right? Right there, it's always positive. I'm not saying that the answer to one of these can't be negative. What I'm saying is the value inside the absolute value signs has to be positive. So this is the other important bullet here. Seeing an absolute value sign does not mean that your final answer can't be negative. I mean, obviously, look, we got a negative final answer. It just means that the value inside the absolute value signs must be positive. Alright, next one. negative 2 times the absolute value of 4 take away 7. Let's not ever do mountains when we have absolute value, okay? We will not do that. So we have to figure out the amount inside. We're going to treat these like brackets, right? So we have the negative 2 just sitting outside, and then inside the absolute value signs, we have 4 take away 7, and 4 take away 7 is negative 3. Okay, next step. We're still not dealing with that negative 2. It just sits there. And what we're going to do now is take the absolute value of negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. Last step. Notice I changed my brackets now to just regular brackets because I took the absolute value. So I don't have to worry about the absolute values anymore. Last step is to multiply negative 2 times 3. You get negative 6. See, here's another answer which is negative. It is very possible to get a negative answer when you're dealing with absolute value signs. But the amount in here, this amount in here, there's no way that could have been negative. And it wasn't. It was positive 3. Okay, last one. We have two absolute value signs. So again, treat them like brackets. In the first absolute value sign, we have the absolute value of negative 4. Well, that's just 4. And I'll put it in normal brackets. Take away. In the second absolute value sign, I'm going to keep them as absolute value signs because I'm not going to take the absolute value yet. I'm going to do 3 take away 5, which is negative 2. Okay, keep the 4. Take away. The absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. So I just end up with 4 take away 2. The answer is 2. Oh, okay, now you might have a question. You might say, well, that doesn't seem too tough or anything, but when would you ever actually use that in real life? And surprise, there are actually some places that you would use this in real life. In fact, you use this sometimes and you don't even think of it. So an example of that, of where you just kind of instinctively use absolute values, is imagine you started at home and you walked in this direction 5 kilometers. And then you walked back this direction past your house and you went 8 kilometers. And then you walked back 2 kilometers this way. It's a lot of walking, by the way. If I asked you, how far did you walk? What most of you would do, you'd get the answer right away. You'd say, well, I walked 5 and 8 and 2. So the answer is 15. But without even really thinking about it, you actually used absolute values there because you went 5 in this direction and then you went back in the opposite direction. So you kind of went negative 8. But you took the absolute value of that because you know that whether you went in this direction, a positive direction, let's say, or this direction, a negative direction, the distance is still positive. You're not going to have a negative distance. And then we had the plus 2 here. And this gives you 15 because there's negative 8, the absolute value of negative 8 becomes positive 8. So one place where absolute values come into place is with distance. Some other places where you use absolute value is the difference between two numbers or between two temperatures. Like if I asked you, what's the difference in temperature between 4 degrees and negative 7 degrees? You could use absolute value. Or what's the difference in owing $7 and being owed $12? You could use absolute values. So I'll give you an example of this one, difference between two numbers. It says, what's the difference between negative 8 and 4? Well, one way you could do that, of course, is you could use a number line. The difference between negative 8 and 4, and you could just kind of look, oh, you have to go 8 up to here and then 4 more, so it's 12. But did you know another way you can get the distance between difference between two numbers is to subtract them, but a difference can only be positive. So we put it in absolute values. The absolute value of negative 8 take away 4 is negative 12, and the absolute value of negative 12 is positive 12. Now, you might have said to yourself, yeah, but how do you know whether to put the negative 8 first or the 4 first? It doesn't matter. If I want to know the difference between 4 and negative 8, or 4 take away negative 8, it'll still work. 4 take away negative 8 is the same as positive 12, and the absolute value of positive 12 is still 12. Okay, do one more of those just to show you. If I want to know what's the difference between negative 6 and negative 24, so for example, let's say the temperature went from negative 6 to negative 24, and what's the difference in temperature? Of course, you don't have to do it this way, but one way you could do it is you could say, okay, what's negative 6 take away negative 24, and since I'm just looking at the difference, I'll take the absolute value of it. Okay, that's equal to negative 6 plus 24, which is positive 18, and the absolute value of 18 is 18. If you did it the other way, you'd have negative 24 take away negative 6, and negative 24 take away negative 6 is the same as negative 24 plus 6, so you get the absolute value of negative 18, which is 18. Alright, last question. I'm not going to actually give you the answer to this for once. I'm going to leave it as a bonus problem to you. You do have to know these by the end of the course, so see if you can figure it out today. The question is to solve this equation. 2x minus 1, take the absolute value of that, and the answer has to be 5. Which value would go in here, or values? It actually turns out there's two numbers that could fit in there. So see if you can figure out what number, or numbers actually, which two numbers can fit in that x spot to make this work. I'll give you a hint. Think about this question. It's a simpler question. Think of what the two answers would be to this, and that might help you get that. Okay, good luck with that. And welcome to your new course, PreCalc 11. I'm very pleased to be teaching you.